brothers and sisters.
I have an older brother. I'm 8 years old and he's 13 years old. My favorite thing about my brother is that he's nice. He cares for me. Even though he bosses me around sometimes, he still cares for me and he loves me, I know.
I have one sister. She's 11. When I cry, she always hugs me. She's heartwarming. She teaches me a little how to ride my bike. She's a great sister to me.
I have 3 brothers. They're all different sizes and different ages. I like to play games with my brothers. My favorite thing about my older brother is that he's a Marine and he's sometimes funny. My baby brother made me no longer the youngest. I love having brothers. I love being a brother.
It's so fun to have a sister.
Coming up next on the Bernstein Bears.
Then after I get it right, I just feel great. It really is a lot of fun. You should try it.
Hi, my name is Griff. I'm 12 years old and in 7th grade. This is my dog, Toby. He's 4 years old. He's smart, cute, he's friendly, and is one of my best friends. Toby really loves to swim, and once he's in, it's hard to get him out. Toby, come here, pup! He always wants to play, no matter where or when, even when I'm on the trampoline. Having a dog is a lot of work, but you get so much back in love and friendship.
Hi, my name is Alana. I just love to dance. I think it makes me nicer, kinder, more outgoing. Also, I think it probably makes me better in school. Just makes me have a passion for everything else.
So, visit your local library, like Maya and Miguel's. Read all about it. Go to pbskidsgo.org for fun with Maya and Miguel. Oh, and talk. SOS!
When Maya Santos gets an idea, there's only one thing to do.
Run!
Watch Maya and Miguel every day on PBS Kids Go.
How long can a snail sleep? The deal is snails live all over, in trees, on the ground, in the desert, and even underwater. When conditions get too hot or cold or dry, snails don't complain. They just pull back in their shells and wait. For as long as 3 years. Now that's a good night's sleep, and day, and night, and day. Go figure.
Maya and Miguel is funded in part by a Ready to Learn, No Child Left Behind grant from the U.S. Department of Education through the Public Broadcasting Service, and by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Local broadcast of Maya and Miguel on Vermont Public Television has been made available in part by Smuggler's Notch Vermont, America's Family Resort, award-winning children's programs presented year-round. This program is also supported by contributing members like you.
Who likes hide and seek? 1, 2, 3. I'll help him hide. Now you can help me. 4, 5, 6. The two of us are full of tricks. 7, 8, 9. Now Sliver can hide me and I'll be just fine. 10. Sure is fun to play as a team. Now let's surprise her. Everyone scream! Jump for joy! You're watching PBS Kids on Vermont Public Television.
Local broadcast of Cyber Chase on Vermont Public Television is supported in part by the Vermont National Education Association, 10,000 Vermont educators working for great public schools for every child. Funding for the program is also provided by contributing members like you.
Major funding for Cyber Chase is provided by the National Science Foundation, America's investment in the future.
Intel Corporation is a proud supporter of PBS. The Intel Innovation in Education Initiative provides teachers with the resources to inspire their students and encourage them to unlock their potential.
Additional funding.
Chinese were here long before the British. They settled here in the 1400s and set up a trading post.
And it was built by the great Admiral Chen Ho. Now, like all Chinese senior military officers, he was a eunuch. And like all eunuchs, he was a big guy. Now, apparently, this is his footprint. See what I mean? Now, if he hadn't stepped ashore and established one of the world's first Chinatown, Malaysia might not have existed at all.
These migrants were the first Chinese people to settle in Malaysia. Nearly 400 years later, a future wave of Chinese immigration was triggered when the British founded what was to become the capital of Malaysia.
Penang was established by Sir Francis Light. Now, he recognized that this swamp-infested island would make an ideal staging post for British trading ships.
Sir Francis Light stepped ashore in 1786 and established Penang as a station for Britain's East India Company. He used it to replenish company ships on their long haul to China and the flourishing tea and opium trade. To service the trade, large numbers of Chinese and Indian workers were encouraged to settle here.
Now, one of Chinatown's greatest contributions to Penang culture is the food. And all over the place, you're going to find street hawkers just like this, selling all kinds of delicacies that combine Chinese and Malay ideas, as well as Indian and Muslim food.
Because of these early Chinese settlers, Penang claims to have invented street food. These laborers lived in appallingly cramped conditions. With no space to cook, they ate their food on the street.
Jellyfish and cuttlefish, my favorite.
The Chinese immigrants not only married into the Malay culture, but also absorbed and adopted local spices and coconut milk into their cuisine, known as baba nonya.
This is pig's intestine, the small intestine, the big intestine, and over here, this is pig stomach. And they cut it up, and they actually put it with porridge. I'm gonna...
The tradition of eating food out on the street still remains today.
This is my humble courage.
Oh,
yes.
wonderful.
The success of the Chinese in Malaysia is probably due to its earliest settlers. I met up with the historian Ku Selma, whose great-grandfather made his fortune here.
It's one of these rags to riches stories.
Yeah?
He came from China as a penniless coolie, and then when he became rich, he bought a lot of property in this area.
He set up a gongsi or a clan house so other Ku kinsmen could get a head start when they arrived in Penang.
This is one of Penang's 5 famous clan temples. And, it works like this. When the migrants come here and then they're rather successful, then they ride back to the clan village. And they tell the relatives, come on over, we can provide you food and shelter initially, find you a job, get you all set up. It was a migrant society. And for people to come here, they need some sort of assurance and some sort of protection,
Clan houses are scattered all across Georgetown and designed to capture the splendor of an imperial palace. Each is named after the leader of the clan. One Chinese who really did make it big built this mansion, which has now become a hotel. Chong Fa-zi was a local Hakka merchant trader who left China as a penniless teenager and eventually established a vast financial empire throughout East Asia.
Now I can see why the New York Times called him the Rockefeller of the East. This house has 38 rooms, 5 courtyards, 7 staircases, and 220 windows. Wow, it's a nice room. Well, today you can actually stay at Chong Fa-zi's stunning mansion and enjoy the lifestyle that he was accustomed to. It only costs $65 a night. It comes with breakfast. Not bad. Feel like a millionaire already. Yes. But of course not all the Chinese did so well, and some of the families lived here. These are known as the clan jetties. You had to be from the same clan or the same family in order to live here. Now the one over there is for the Lin family, this one here is for the Chu clan, the one over there is for the Tan clan, and the one right at the end, that jetty over there, is for all the others. I'm on the wrong jetty. I'm a Tan.
At Georgetown's waterfront, entire villages belong to the clans. The clan jetties are wooden houses perched on stilts over the sea. Each of the 6 villages has its own temple and houses just one clan.
Mr. Chu, Chu 先生你好吗？今天有做什么呢？This is Mr. Chu Chang-hee, and he's here at the Chu clan. He lives here, and what's going to happen is that he's just invited me to witness his practice. I don't know what practice is all about, but he tells me it's something really exciting, and I should not miss it. 我们走吧？可以了。So let's go have a look. 要不要拉拉手去？来拉拉手。
It is thought that flag throwing originated in China. In fact, the immigrants, known locally as Sinke, newcomers, brought with them a whole range of superstitions, festivals, and traditions from the China they left behind. Among these are the Hungry Ghost Festival, where paper effigies are burnt to keep the ancestors happy. Then there is the Mooncake Festival, where elaborate lanterns are created, representing figures of Chinese mythology. The Chinese established themselves across Asia, and another big destination was Singapore. In the 14th century, Chinese traders described Singapore as a pirate-infested island. Today, it is a prosperous city-state and has overcome its natural resources to become one of the most powerful economies of Asia. In less than 200 years, Singapore has transformed itself from an island swamp into a modern industrialized nation.
Like Penang, Singapore was a creation of the British East India Company, a shipping operation that wanted to control global trade in spices, tea, silk, and many other important Asian goods.
It was Sir Thomas Stamford Raffles who arrived in 1819 and made Singapore a trade hub for Southeast Asia. He divided the city into different districts where the Chinese, Indians, and British settled. These divisions still exist today.
Chinatown has always been at the heart of Singapore, and it was with the arrival of a huge number of Chinese immigrants in the 19th century that really transformed this small, obscure backwater to one of the most prosperous cities in the world.
The increase in Gambier and pepper plantations brought many Chinese cultivators, traders, and laborers to Singapore. Most of them had to borrow money for their passage over and had to work for years to pay off their debts.
Chinatown is actually a shade and shelter for the early immigrants. They came here facing a lot of hardship. So the conditions which they found themselves, they had to get used to it. For example, in the coolie houses, it was very congested. Sometimes many of these coolie houses were run along the basis of a few hundred people living in a small cubicle. It's not just a few people living in a room.
Behind me is one of the original coolie houses. Now these spaces were actually licensed to hold up to 200 of these men. They're just cramped holding pens where the men were treated like beasts of burden. Now I really want to find out more about these places, and I know just the person to ask.
Geraldine Lowe was brought up in Singapore and remembers the old shop houses.
Well, I can remember actually walking down this very street because Pagoda Street was where all the tailor shops were, and they were usually on the ground floor, and there was always a funny smell. And I didn't realize that it was actually opium sort of wafting down maybe until later. But there was so much humanity in the street. You know, it was so hot inside that everyone stayed outside on the street and sitting around, even small kids, until 10 o'clock at night, until they really wanted to sleep.
And I noticed that, the conditions of these coolie houses was really very dire.
Well, they were very basic. I mean, what we could see was the front of the room. It was set up with bunks, 2 or 3 on top of each other. This particular one was full of old men, so they were all single men who perhaps, worked as a trishaw rider, or they worked for the night soil collection, various jobs that they do during the day. Whenever you passed by, there were people sleeping in the bunks. So there was those that worked during the day would sleep at night, and those who worked in the night slept in the day.
Between 1821 and 1945, about 3 million contract laborers were shipped out of China. The abolition of slavery caused a shortage of labor, and the coolie trade was introduced. Unlike the Chinese, who emigrated voluntarily, these coolies were press-ganged into ships. They were transported to slave plantations in Fiji, the Caribbean islands, Mauritius, Hawaii, and the Spanish-speaking countries of Latin America. Our journey takes us to Peru, where a harsh fate awaits Chinese laborers in the mid-19th century. Peru has a great cultural diversity. Known as the land of the Incas, Peruvian civilization spans thousands of years, and its ruins still remain. In the largest cities, the legacy of the conquistadors and colonial architecture are on display everywhere. Following the example of planters in the West Indies, Mauritius, and Cuba, Peruvians turned to the importation of Chinese coolies for their guano and sugar enterprises. Dr. Chang explains the fate of these Chinese settlers in Peru.
The coolies in China were contracted to work in Peru, and they were given the illusion that after the 8 years they were going to work in Peru, they would have enough money to live far better than in China, and they came with contracts to work for about equivalent to $8 a month, of which 4 were subtracted to pay for the sea fare. The labor conditions of the coolies in Peru were appalling, and when they infringed any of the arbitrary rules, they were punished severely, and when they escaped, they were captured, they were branded and put in chains. Nevertheless, they remained and finished their contracts and obtained their liberty and stay in the country as businessmen. After 1874, there were other waves of Chinese that came as free agents. Some of them were friends or relatives of the coolies. Others had heard of Peru and the land of opportunity. Today, the population is about 10 to 50% of the total population of the country.
The heart of the Chinese community is in Lima's bustling Chinatown. It is most celebrated for its chifas, Chinese restaurants that fuse Asian and Peruvian cuisine.
In Lima, chifa food is the best. I eat it once a week, at least.
Chinese food here in Peru is very different. It's a great mix. I love it.
Classic Asian ingredients such as ginger, soy sauce, and rice are mixed with Peruvian ingredients.
It's extraordinary. It's delicious.
I love it.
I've tried coolie before, but not this style in which the skin is so crunchy. I think the mixture, coolie with Chinese food, is very good.
5 generations on, Chinese Peruvians are prominent in business, politics, and arts. Part Chinese, part Peruvian, Sumi Cujon is one of Peru's most successful fashion designers and takes her inspiration from the fusion of her two cultures.
My grandfather came to Peru from China in the early 20s. My father was born here. I decided being a fashion designer when my father took me to China. I feel really amazing with all the fabrics that I found there. Chinese heritage brings me the structures, the lines, and Peruvian culture inspires me the details, the motif. I feel really comfortable because I am part of both cultures. I use silk, fabric, and alpaca fabric. It's an eclectic mix, but I like it. People who buy my clothes are risky people. They have modern style life and they love originality in design.
Our next destination takes Justine Shapiro to one of the most vibrant Chinatowns on the planet, San Francisco. San Francisco became the international magnet for the 1960s hippies. Its Golden Gate Bridge is possibly the most famous in the world. The city has an abundance of traditional architecture and many different neighborhoods, each with a distinct identity. The biggest community here are the Chinese.
Hey, this all didn't just come out of nowhere. So why did the Chinese come to California in the first place? Well, you could kind of say they came to follow the yellow brick road.
In the mid-19th century, gold brought many Chinese over to California. Unlike the press gang coolies, they were free settlers. But they too were escaping a corrupt dynasty, famine, and peasant rebellions, which made conditions in their home country unbearable.
On January 24th, 1848, carpenter James Marshall discovered gold by accident, sparking one of the largest human migrations in history and transforming California from a rural, pastoral environment to a land of opportunity.
Justine meets up with Ed Ellen at the Marshall Gold Discovery State Historic Park to find out more about these Chinese fortune seekers.
Justine, this is a replica of the original sawmill. Now, Marshall discovered gold while building the sawmill back in January 24th, 1848. That event literally changed the world. So this started the greatest mass migration of people ever. 50,000 people a year were coming to California for years. And a lot of those people were Chinese.
And were they finding gold, all those people?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you found, you kept. They called this Gold Mountain.
Whatever you found was yours.
That's exactly it. And we're going to agitate it. Go ahead and do that. Back in 1848, when gold was first discovered, these miners were finding an ounce of gold per person per day.
Wow.
By 1849, it had dropped down to a half an ounce, though. And by 1850, they were down to a quarter of an ounce. Yeah, it had changed dramatically. Now, in 1850, there were very few Chinese here in California. But by 1860, 1/3 of the population of this area was composed of Chinese.
1/3 of the population.
That's right. Now, they didn't realize when they got on the boat that they assumed they were going to make an ounce of gold a day. But that had changed dramatically by the time they got here. By 1862, it was pretty much over with. The Chinese started working for the Central Pacific Railroad. So they could do better there than they could panning for gold. That's when I consider the gold rush is basically over. Whoa, there you did it.
Gold. I found
there you
gold.
did it.
That's gold.
That's it. That's it for sure.
Oh my gosh, that's really a piece. How much is this worth, this little piece of gold?
$1.
$1. Wow. It really stands out against the black sand.
It certainly does. Yeah. Once you've seen gold, you'll always know gold.
Okay, I think I'm bitten. The Chinese had to seek their livelihood elsewhere, and they found employment in the construction of the Transcontinental Railroad. Over 10,000 Chinese men paved the way so that track could be laid, uniting the east and west coasts of the United States. The Chinese were so valued for their skill and their courage that railroad agents were going to China to try to recruit even more cheap Chinese labor. At the time, no one thought they'd be able to lay track through the Sierra Nevada mountains. And the fact that the Chinese managed to drill, tunnel, and blast their way through the hard granite in less time than anyone thought possible was a huge accomplishment. The work was done in remote locations, in terrible weather, incredible snowstorms. It was very dangerous work.
After the gold rush, the Chinese, many of whom had been farmers in the Canton River deltas of China, also found that there was a market for their agricultural skills. They made their way to Northern California's river delta, 65 miles northeast of San Francisco. Hidden along the banks of the Sacramento River is a sleepy little town that time seems to have forgotten. A Chinese town that has resisted modern advances. Here in Locke, the year could easily be 1930 or even 1880.
Built in 1915 by and exclusively for the Chinese working in the orchards here, Locke had boarding houses, schools, stores, gambling houses, whorehouses, opium dens, and not a single officer of the law. Today, Locke is registered as a National Historical Place due to the fact that it's the only town in the United States to be built and inhabited solely by Chinese.
There are about 12 Chinese still living here in Locke, and Justine met up with two of them, Ping Li and Connie King. At 88 and 83, their lives have spanned nearly the entire history of the town.
You know, in general, if you look at the big cities in San Francisco or Oakland, some places where they hang up those rose ducks and all that kind, we had it here, only in a smaller scale. And it was quite busy in the 20s, and the town, and a lot of children.
Do you remember each other when you were little kids running around Locke? And did you play together? Were you friends when you were little?
I'm older. Yeah. I don't play with little girls. Play with the same, my age.
So even though your father was one of the founders and they built Locke, they couldn't own the land that they built the town on, is that correct?
You cannot. That time the law says, no, you can't.
I tried to buy a piece of land. They wouldn't sell it to me because I'm Chinese.
And did they say that? Were they upfront about it? We cannot sell you the land?
I can't sell it to you because you're Chinese.
Because you're Chinese.
But I told them I'm born here, I'm an American citizen, I'm entitled to it. But they said no. Then I saw a little farm, 5-acre farm that I want to buy, and my husband and I thought for sure that we won't be living next to the white people, we can get the little ranch. And then I talked to the man that owned it, and he said, I'm sorry, Mrs. King, I can't sell it to you because you're Chinese. And that got me a little upset, see? So I've been fighting for my land ever since.
And do you own the house that you live in now?
2004, December 11, 2004, I finally got the land that I wanted all this year. I waited for 55 years.
55 years to own your own land.
I was so worried that I might die before I get the land, but anyway, I got the land before I die anyway.
The prejudice and discrimination that the residents of Locke endured was common to all Chinese in California, and this discrimination only intensified during the Depression of the 1880s, when Caucasian Americans saw Chinese as a threat given the scarcity of jobs at that time.
Deportation to China was considered, and in 1882, the Exclusion Act was introduced. This denied all rights of citizenship to the Chinese, limiting them to the status of visiting workers. Apart from having no rights to own land, run businesses, get education, or vote, one very cruel law to prevent families settling in America was to disallow wives from joining their husbands. Strangely, other family members might be let in. To enforce these laws, Angel Island was set up as an immigration station. Over a period of 10 years, 175,000 Chinese were held there for interrogation. Lee King Wong remembers at the age of 8, the authorities attempting to separate her from her mother.
My father was not allowed to bring my mother over as his wife. We were taken to Angel Island right away, and Mama and my two sisters and I were taken to the women's barrack, and they locked the barrack door. It was kind of gloomy. It was not a cheerful place. Mama looked at us. She said, "Don't forget, call me Auntie. Call me Yi." We waited around to be interrogated, and they told us that we have to tell the truth, answer the questions, and please do not lie. And of course, they asked questions about Mama. They said, "That lady over there, is she your mother or is she your aunt?" And I said, "She is our aunt." And then the interpreter smiled, and he said, "Little girl, I am going to ask you, what is your name?" And my little sister was so happy, and she said, "Huh, you don't tell me your name, why should I tell you my name?" And the interpreter started to laugh, and the chief inspector said, all right, I believe you. And so he got a stamp, he stamped the papers and said, "We're going to tell your Papa that, you are fine, and he's going to be waiting for you in San Francisco." For 40 years, we still pretended that Mama was our aunt. And it was not until 1972, Mama and I went to the attorney. She confessed. And we were kind of worried. And the attorney was so nice. "Oh, don't worry. Oh, we know the story. It's fine. You just go home." So Mama was very happy. She became Mrs. G in 1972.
During the heyday of the gold rush, these immigrant laborers wanted to get rich and go home. But many of them stayed, becoming part of the workforce and creating permanent settlements.
So they stayed and created the granddaddy of all Chinatowns right here in San Francisco.
Justine heads for the heart of Chinatown, Portsmouth Square, to meet 3 young residents, Rosa, Wendell, and Kelvin, who are passionate about their community.
Because it used to be the San Francisco's town square. This is where they held their town halls and their town meetings. But as San Francisco started to expand outward, Chinatown basically took over this place. And now it's also known as Chinatown's living room.
Why Chinatown living room?
It's known as the Chinatown's living room because if you look around the square right now, there's a lot of people just basically hanging out. And the reason for that is because these individuals actually live in really small apartments in Chinatown. And they don't have room to hang out in their apartment, so they come out to the Portsmouth Square to chill, to socialize, to play card games. So this is why it's called the Chinatown's living room.
So this is Ross Alley, the oldest alleyway in San Francisco.
The oldest?
Yeah. Back in the 1850s, it was infamous for a lot of brothels, gambling, and opium dens. However, today, it's become a really important part of our community, as well as a really big tourist attraction.
Yeah, there are a lot of tourists here.
And one of these attractions is Junyu's Barbershop.
Junyu's Barbershop.
With our magical musical barber.
Musical barber, yeah.
So the reason why this barbershop is so famous because the original barber was known to sing great Frank Sinatra tunes.
Frank Sinatra tunes?
Yeah. And so when Frank Sinatra himself, when he came to Chinatown, he made sure to stop by the barbershop to see how good the impressions were. And they sang a couple of tunes, and he got his haircut and had a really good time. And ever since then, it was, for celebrities, it was a must-to-do thing when they came to Chinatown.
And that's why they've got all their photos there in the window.
Yeah, so Michael Douglas, Matt Dillon, Clint Eastwood. Yeah.
shay. Oh, they're warm.
Yeah, so this is the Golden Gate Fortune Cookie Factory.
Yummy.
They make their cookies fresh, so they taste really good.
So good.
So a lot of people think, oh, a fortune cookie, they came from China, but actually they originated here in San Francisco.
No way.
You can't even get them in China.
Is that true?
Yeah, so the cool thing about here is that you can actually get your own fortune made here. So you guys could probably get one that's a Happy Chinese New Year Glow Trekker or something like that.
Customized fortune cookie.
Yes.
Happy Chinese New Year, Globe Trekker.
So this is Stockton Street, and this is actually the heart of Chinatown. It's where all the action goes on. Yeah. And there are 19,000 residents in Chinatown, and this is where they shop. Yeah. You can get fresh meat, poultry, vegetables, and herbal shops, even tea parlor in this street alone. So you can see that all these action goes on.
In San Francisco's Chinatown, you find authentic, traditional Chinese culture and the modern buzz of the new. And the Chinese living in California today are living in relative comfort, enjoying the best of both worlds.
However, at the time of the Exclusion Act, a wave of anti-Chinese racism in the West drove many Chinese to head east along the railroads. They settled in the more cosmopolitan community of New York, establishing the biggest Chinatown in the United States. Megan McCormick is there to check it out.
It's Chinatown, New York style.
Known as one of the world's greatest cities, New York is a melting pot of ethnic communities. The saying goes, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. The Big Apple is America's economic, artistic, and spiritual capital. Parks and open spaces lie between the skyscrapers, but the city's most prized possession is its people, and the Chinese New Yorkers are no exception.
Ni hao.
Chinatown on the Lower East Side of Manhattan is the largest in the Western Hemisphere. With over 150,000 Chinese here, you could almost forget you're in New York.
This is Corky. He is the undisputed, unofficial Asian American photographer laureate, right?
Correct.
And you focus mainly on issues of the Chinese community?
Yeah, the culture, the heartbeat of Chinatown. One of the things I'm going to show you today, a photograph of Chinatown still life. It talks about the Bachelor Society.
What's the Bachelor Society?
Well, up until about 1976, there were still a lot of single men who worked in restaurants. And the reason why they have so many names here is because they only were here like, well, one day a week.
Ah, so they didn't all live here, but they needed to get their mail somewhere.
Yeah, so on their day off, they would pick up their mail, let's stay here overnight, and then go back to work for like 6 days. And
Bachelors, picking up mail, crazy bachelors.
yeah, they couldn't pick up any women, though.
No?
At least not Chinese.
Okay.
One of the photographs I had taken here was this guy who actually worked in Havana, Cuba, and he came after Castro took over because Castro expelled all the Chinese from Cuba. And he got reunited with his wife in 1979 because they had been separated for about 30 years.
Really?
This photograph so they can send to their kids in China.
So their children are still in China. They were separated for 30 years, and this is their life in New York once they were reunited.
Yeah.
Corky is recording modern Chinese-American history, which until recently has been ignored.
Only a couple decades ago, Chinatown's history was almost lost forever. You see, as the older generations retired or passed away, their stuff was simply discarded into the street along with all that it represented. However, somebody saw the treasure in that trash and created the Museum of the Chinese in the Americas.
Located in a former schoolhouse on the Lower East Side of New York, the museum hosts exhibitions and events that explore the Chinese immigrant experience.
Back in the day, there were very few options for the Chinese who were here. One thing they were allowed to do was laundry. This was called the 8-pound livelihood. Basically, over a hot stove all day, working away, pressing laundry.